First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me here to share our experience in the field of cybersecurity. For those of you who may not know what is CyberSecurity Malaysia, we are actually a government agency under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. However, we also report to the various stakeholders. We are also the operational and technical arm to the National Security Council of Malaysia, looking into the cybersecurity side. We also work with the Ministry of Information, Communication and Multimedia in Malaysia. In fact, we work across various ministries and agencies in Malaysia because cybersecurity is not a vertical issue. It's cut across all sectors. And as mentioned just now in the presentation by Alan, it cut across all sectors. And this is what here I think they call critical infrastructure. In Malaysia, we call it Critical National Information Infrastructure, or CNII. But anyway, basically, I'm going to share a bit of our experience or best practices in terms of how we secure the nation's cyberspace. My presentation will be divided into a bit of background or introduction and some understanding of the global trend of cyber threats, and then our experience with regards to the landscape and how we address the cybersecurity challenges and the way forward and conclusion. As we know, the world nowadays is very highly connected, and a lot of countries are moving towards connectivity. And in fact, Asia-Pacific region is one of the highest and the fastest region in terms of connectivity. You can see there roughly almost 50% penetration of internet compared to the various other regions. So we are basically moving towards that direction to become a digital nation. And this is not just in Philippines, it's not only in Malaysia, but around the world, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. And at the same time, not only about internet, there are various other type of technology. This is what we call the global computing trend with regards to mobility. Now people don't use really desktop, they now started to use a lot of mobile devices. At the same time, bring your own device. The issue of Internet of Things, social media, big data, these are the global computing trends. It's not just in Malaysia, not also in Philippines, it's everywhere. When we started to be connected to this world, to become a digital citizen, these are the trends that's happening. And even more interesting and even more challenging, when we talk about internet, we talk about people-to-people communication. But now we are moving also towards what we call smart car, smart fridge, smart everything. This is the world what we call Internet of Things. And even in the future, even more complicated, it's about Internet of Everything. Everything will be connected. Not only people to people, people to machine to machine as in IoT, but we also have people and machine and processors. So there is a lot of issues. When we talk about connectivity, we talk about interconnectivity, we talk about also interdependent, because all are linked, all are connected. People talk about the good side of IT, about productivity, about communication, about efficiency, but rarely, and not many really talk about the other side of technology, the ICTs, which is the cyber threat. Because technology is a double-edged sword. There are good things, there are also the bad things that comes together, and we need to be ready and prepare. And what are the threats? Well, we have been very familiar. We've talked about land, air, sea, and space as a dimension of warfare. But actually, even in the United States, they have defined the new man-made domain called cyberspace as the fifth dimension of warfare. And this is an area that is of concern. Nowadays, everything. Last time we used to be familiar with what we call the normal crime, the traditional crime. Now, we also have digital crime or cybercrime. And we used to have just a traditional criminal, now we have cyber criminals. So everything, whatever we have in the physical world, now also we will have it in the digital world. So we have to look at these issues of cyber attack, cyber threat as a concern. In fact, as a concern at the national level, as mentioned just now by Alan. And Malaysia looks and view it seriously. And based on the study by Executive Ombudsman Survey, of World Economic Forum, the cyber attack is perceived as the risk of highest concern in 8 economies: Estonia, Germany, Japan, Malaysia, Netherlands, Singapore, Switzerland, and even the United States. So we see it as a concern. And I can see the passion just now be presented by Alan, the importance of even now Philippines moving to it, which is the right direction, because the world is now moving towards that era. And also the same survey by the World Economic Forum under the Global Risk Perception Survey. If you can see, there are various, you can see here, there are various types of risk that is being identified by the Global Risk Perception Survey. I would like to highlight this red one is actually related to cyber, like critical information infrastructure breakdown, terrorist attacks, cyber attacks, data theft or fraud. But however, they are linked also to this. So even though this is physical, this is cyber, the physical world is also being impacted by the cyber attacks because they are interlinked. And if you look at the top global business risk, in 2015, cybercrime, IT failures, espionage, and data breaches is being listed by this Alliance Risk Barometer as the top 5. And in 2016, it has become top 3. So you imagine it's increasing. So no longer something that we can take it very lightly. It is a serious matter. It will affect government, business, etc. And what are the type of threats? Well, I just like to simplify in terms of there can be international organized crimes, state and non-state actors that attacks on CNIs, hacktivism, espionage, malware attacks, and even misuse of internet and social media. So these are the trends. And some of the motivation behind these attacks is, for example, cybercrime. So it's actually one of the easiest way. I mean, we used to watch a movie or in television. People wants to rob. They go to the bank, put their mask, and ask for money. Nowadays, you can sit in the very nice aircon condition, in a very nice environment. You just key in, very comfortable, and you can get more money and less risk because it's very difficult for you to be captured. So, obviously, this is a better way, and that's why you can see now people say that cybercrime will overpass, and in fact, some say that it has overpassed the traditional crime. The cybercrime costs global economy $445 billion every year, with damage to business from the theft of intellectual exceeding $160 billion. And there are various other studies. And it is a global trend now. It's increasing, not just in Malaysia, not just in the Philippines. It's a worldwide phenomenon. So it is a concern. Why? Like I said, it's less risk and more comfortable. So these are challenges. These are some of the examples, for example, studies by Symantec, for example. Billion-dollar scams where more than 400 companies targeted with scam. And if you look at other examples, ransomware. This is a new type of malware. It's happening in the region. Not only in Philippines, Malaysia, it's happening in the region and worldwide. Especially in this region, what do you know by ransomware? Well, obviously, once you're infected with this malware, you can't access your file. And in order for you to access all your documents and files, etc., you have to pay ransom. So now, as I mentioned just now, you used to have a physical ransom. Now we have cyber ransom. So everything that you have in this physical world now in the cyber world. So how are we ready? Are we ready with this? You imagine you are working with all the works, you have all the information in your PC, whatever, and suddenly you cannot access it. And in order for you to access it, you have to pay a certain amount of money. So these are the challenges. There's an increasing number of ransom threats, and it's become a new weapon for these organized crimes nowadays. That's one threat, that's cybercrime. Another threat, just now also Helen mentioned about web defacement, Ms. Rosa also mentioned about that, is what we call hacktivism. This is another threat. They are anonymous. They are sophisticated. And it's hard to capture them because one of the characteristics of internet is about anonymity. They can do crime and they can get away easily. They can deface. Yeah? And the other thing is about cyber espionage. For example, maybe some of the malware is sort of like a spyware. So they can gather all your intellectual properties for companies or for government. They will gather all your confidential data and send back to the command and control center. So these are real. And then another, the emerging of cyber war. Just now I had a discussion briefly with Alan with the current Southeast Asia regional issues. That's Philippines and another country. Yeah? So these type of things, could happen. Attacks among countries, state or non-state actors. It's actually not. It's happening globally. Oops. Sorry. And also, the attacks are even more sophisticated. The advanced persistent threat, just now. The various type of Stuxnet, so these are type of, we call it a very sophisticated. It's not just like something that you can depend on your IPS, IDS, firewall, blah, blah, blah. It's not that kind of standard. That is signature based. This is not. So how do you manage that? So Malaysia's experience. Well, just like any other countries, we aspire to be a nation that is connected. We aspire to be a digital nation. We aspire to be what we call digital Malaysia. We even launched our Internet of Things roadmap. And I believe in Philippines also there are a lot of initiatives that is ICT based, focusing and leveraging the good side of ICT. But in reality also, we have to remember there's also the dark side. Look at Malaysia. And there's a study by FireEye finding that organizations in Malaysia face 65% higher risk of targeted cyber attack than the global average in the first half of 2015. And it's everywhere. So these are reality. Whether we like it or not, we have to face it. I have in CyberSecurity Malaysia our MyCert, and we have been receiving the various type of reports. And these are some of the reports, those that have been reported to us, but in actual it could be more. And in terms of crime, well, we are quite exposed. You can see 1 in 3 Malaysian internet users have personally experienced cybercrime in the past. I'd like to highlight this red one. Even report found that in Malaysia, 56% of consumers believe it is more likely to have their credit card information stolen after shopping online. So, worry, while we push for online business, while we push for e-commerce, because this is opportunities for you to, for example, access global market, but at the same time, the issue of trust and confidence, that may hinder and become an obstacle. So we need to be ready with that. Cyber crime, for example, can be this credit cards fraud. And in fact, the MyCert is a department under CyberSecurity Malaysia. The report that we received, roughly almost 50% of the cyber incidents reported to us are related to fraud. And then the internet scam. There are various types of internet online scam: love scam, parcel scam, job scam, whatever name you can call it, Because nowadays people can just, I would say, try their luck. For example, maybe there's a handsome man or a beautiful woman. They become trapped to the what we call love scam. There's also job scam. What do we mean by job scam? Well, suddenly you receive an email saying that you've been offered a very good job in somewhere with multiple salaries. Somehow we tended to think that people will not fall trapped into this. But in actual, there's a lot of it happening, and these are the real cases. ransomware I mentioned just now, is also real in Malaysia. And we are ranked number 12 in APAC in terms of the number of ransomware attacks. I have to even issue a national ransomware warning this year. It was published, whereby we saw that an increase of almost about 300% increase compared to last year with regards to ransomware. So an issue that is concerned in Malaysia. And also that I mentioned just now, hacktivism. So Malaysia is also, just like just now Ms. Rosa mentioned about web defacement in the Philippine government website, we are also been hacked. So defacement of government website. So how do we tackle this? How do we address these issues? One thing about cybersecurity is not purely about technical. It's not only about technology, but you need to also look into the aspects of people, which is actually the weakest link in cybersecurity. You also need to look into aspects of policy. I saw just now Alan put a plan of policy and act, this is the right thing to do. And then technology is about latest, trusted, reliable equipment, tools, software. We need that, but we need to also manage the changes of dynamics of technology. And like I mentioned just now, it's not just now about internet, it's also about Internet of Things. So how do we manage that? I think you've heard about, for example, people in the news saying about the smart car, smart car with no driver. I think the Tesla, how they have been hacked. So you imagine, people talking about that, and suddenly you've been hacked, so someone else can control those kind of things. And also the important thing also that we should not forget on the process. I heard just now about ISMS 27001, which is a good practice, and these things that we do. In Malaysia, we have adopted in 2006 what we call the National Cybersecurity Policy, with the intent to ensure that our critical infrastructure secure, resilient, and self-reliant, and then infused with a culture of security, stability, social well-being, and wealth creation. We have identified 10 sectors. Just now, Alan mentioned several sectors, I think 15. So we have identified 10 sectors like government service, energy, health, banking, etc. And in addition to that, we have policy trust that looks into how we govern the various entities and agencies, how we manage the issues of legislative and regulatory framework, how do we look into technological side, how do we look into building culture of security and capacity building, how we build capabilities in terms of R&D towards self-reliance, how we focusing on the enforcement side, compliance, and then in terms of emergency readiness, I saw the plan that there is going to be a cyber drill, for example. These are things that, I can see the plan is being placed in the right direction. And the international cooperation. So I declared to Alan, I'd like to be the first to collaborate with Philippines, the new entity with DICT. Okay. And in the context of Malaysia, we have what we call we have defined what we call e-sovereignty. And in terms of what are the goals of e-sovereignty is to preserve the national identity, protection of national digital border, and education and awareness. And these are areas that we are focusing on. So because of this, government has established CyberSecurity Malaysia. We actually started initially as a CERT. That should be the start and should be the first thing to be established. And the idea of setting up NCERT just now, which is the good, step in the right direction. We started our CERT in 1997, and we evolved to become National Information Security Emergency Response. And then in 2007, we were rebranded and even given more function after the National Cybersecurity Policy was established as the CyberSecurity Malaysia. And next year will be our 20th anniversary. These are some of our role. And in terms of readiness just now, resilient that Helen has highlighted, it's about how we bounce back. To me, the threat is not just about responsive now. We have to look not just responsive and corrective. We have to be able to become proactive. And not only proactive, we have to be also predictive. This is the analyzing what we call the ability of big data capabilities to predict, to prevent, detect, responsive, and corrective. And these are areas that we are involved in CyberSecurity Malaysia. And some of the services that we are doing, Cyber 999, this is our MyCert, now just a division. We also have digital forensic, and then we also have security management best practices, security assurance, certification, professional development, outreach, strategic engagement, and research. These are some of the areas actually also been mentioned in the plan. Addressing people, training. Training is very important. IC Squared, EC Council, whatever. We need to have the right talent. The weakest link, people. We have a program called CyberSafe. CyberSafe stands for Cyber Security Awareness for Everyone. So it's not just about school children. It's not just about corporate sectors. It's not just about government people. Everyone, because everyone has to take responsibility to have themselves equipped with basic knowledge about cybersecurity. It is not responsibility of DICT alone. It's not just like in Malaysia. It's not only the responsibility of CyberSecurity Malaysia. It's everyone's responsibility. So we need to have at least basic knowledge about this. And in terms of addressing cybercrime, like I mentioned just now, we cannot be just responsive. So in CyberSecurity Malaysia, we have embarked into the big data analytics capabilities to predict possible crimes, online scam, threat that is there in terms of based on our R&D activities. For example, in just online scam, we have been having a lot of scams and fraud cases. Through big data analytics, we are developing what we call learning algorithm model to predict a threat and then threat profile all these scams, fraud cases. And from there, we'll be able to detect even before it happens, and then we will pass and work with the law enforcement agencies. This is the cert I mentioned. So we handle incident handling. We have cyber early warning, technical collusion, and malware research center, where we study and do a lot of research on malware. And digital forensic. The other thing that this is, I think, being handled under your legislative, the crime and investigation. It is very important when criminals, cyber criminals, do some, they did crime. How do you prosecute them? So it's very important to manage the issue of digital evidence. So you have to have a proper lab. We have a digital forensic lab here, and it is currently the only digital forensic lab being certified by the American Society of Criminal Lab Directors in Asia Pacific. And our expert witness in this digital forensic lab is the only entity being certified by law in Malaysia under Criminal Procedure Code as expert witness in court. Because in the case of when you bring your digital evidence to the court, they will challenge you. They will challenge your lab. They will challenge your process. And that requires for you to tackle that early ahead so that it can be recognized. And there are also evidence preservation facilities, etc. We also have our forensic lab. We have been doing computer, multimedia, audio, visual, and now we embark into more cutting-edge forensic work that involve biometric, multimedia forensic, mobile device forensic, big data forensic, cyber threat, and memory research. This is a 2D, 3D kind of biometric forensic, because we also need to handle like this kind of CCTV work, etc. And these are some of the labs that we have in Malaysia, and we also work with various local and international universities. Again, the other thing on the process side, we are very much inclined for organization to have a systematic process and structured information security management. So we encourage the government ministries. In fact, we put it as a directive through a cabinet decision, whereby they should be ISMS certified under ISO IEC 27001 ISMS. Then also perform security assurance. So our team do and check, and then we also encourage them to work, whether with public or with private sector or with us, to do vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. Another one is on the readiness. This is, we call it XMAIA, the National Cyber Crisis. We have been conducting a yearly event on this, and next year we will be having the sixth National Cyber Crisis, involving 200 plus agencies among all the 10 critical sectors. So we test, and normally my team will be the one that be the good side and the bad side, to test them and simulate that kind of environment. We are also involved in IoT security because we know this is the future. These are the emerging. So we are advisor to the government in implementing the IoT work, especially on the IoT security framework. We work with various partners, so we don't play or work alone. We have to work together, and we don't believe that all the expertise can be reside in one area. So we work with research institutions, universities, private sector, bodies, non-government, media, government agencies, and law enforcement agencies. For example, in terms of staying ahead with research, we work with the local and international universities to ensure that we can identify technologies relevant and desirable by the critical infrastructure. Thank you. And even yesterday, not yesterday, 2 days ago, I was in one of the universities in Malaysia called UTM in Johor. We just established a new lab called Big Data Lab. So it is actually focusing on malware analytics and also cyber threat intelligence. These are some of the activities that we do. We have programmed to clean up the infrastructure called Coordinated Malware Eradication and Remediation Program. And in terms of addressing cross-border cyber threats via global cooperation, we focus on the need to work internationally and domestically. Here, for example, at the domestic level, to protect national security, prosperity, and safety, we focus on public-private partnership, and and at the international level, we work with various entities like ARF, CISCAP, APCERT, OICCERT, etc., and also various other like ITU, WTA, UN, ASEAN, etc., to show the involvement in international. So we take leadership. For example, we are currently the past chairman and permanent secretary to the OIC CERT. We are currently the deputy chairman of the Asia Pacific CERT and lead coordinator malware eradication program for the Asia Pacific. We are, as mentioned, the pioneer for the digital forensic lab in Malaysia and the first in Asia Pacific region accredited by the ESCAP lab. We are also involved in the cybersecurity MTCP parade training. Just now I met one of the alumni from Philippines who attended our MTCP program from the Department of Justice. And then we were involved in this on the e-commerce, chairman, World Trust Mark, the Islamic Development Bank, in terms of leadership. Common criteria. Just now, Alan mentioned about products. People buy any products into your network. It needs to be reviewed. It needs to be evaluated to ensure there's no backdoors, etc. So currently, we are the the only Southeast country in Southeast Asia be able to test and certify ICT product recognized internationally by Europe, US, and even and other Japan, etc., under the common criteria scheme. CISCAP, E-Commerce Business Alliance, which I was also appointed recently as one of the 32 members of the global expert of APAC ECBA. Okay, I have to be quick. These are some of the recognition. I think just go quickly, the various awards that we received. Even the recent one, we received the YCIS awards. And we also won our services with FireEye in Washington, and etc. We were ranked in the Global Cybersecurity Index as currently jointly third with Australia, Malaysia, and Oman. And the main thing is that, as mentioned, is we need to, not just about technical, we have to look and strengthen the law, strengthen the people, strengthen the cooperation, and strengthen the organization and the governance. So these are areas, as a country, we have to, in order to manage and secure cyberspace. So, in conclusion, in these dynamic and challenging cyber threats, there is a need to have cybersecurity protection that is dynamic. Yeah? We cannot just depend on the responsive. We have to be holistic and even adaptive with flexible intelligence strategy to counter the emerging trends in advanced attack. And then have systems to be able to profile, mitigate potential criminals, detect, deliver early warning of hostile concern, as well as capability of learning from cyber attacks and strengthening the cybersecurity ecosystem, addressing people, process, technology, and through partnership at domestic and global level. With that, thank you.